Whoops. Welcome, everybody. It is noon. It is One-on-One Wednesday today here from the Hall Around Town Radio Studios in beautiful downtown Springboro, Ohio. Glad to have you with me today. Thanks for joining us, folks, and thanks for joining on a beautiful day. It's starting to clear up outside. We're having a good time here, and I've got to get to it right away because I have a wonderful friend with me today. We've talked, Ed, so many times about the blues experience and all those things. You've been on the show and other events, but I've never had you on the show to where we just had the opportunity to chat about Ed Sawicki, man. And I think it's going to be so much fun.
I think it's going to be a blast, Scott. I'm really delighted to be here.
And thanks for repping the shirt today, too. Look at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. So, Ed, so many people admire and adore you for what you do for the local music community. You're one of those massive community supporters when it comes to live local music, and you do it through the lens. And we're going to get deep into that today a little bit about your view through that lens, so to speak. But I want to go back in time a little bit. You had an extremely successful career in life in the corporate world before ever becoming this photographer of the rock stars that I've coined you with that phrase.
I love it.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What inspired this, change, this major life change for you, so to speak?
Well, it's not so much of a major life change as opposed to emphasizing certain aspects of the way I am. Okay. I've always been a bit of a mixed right brain, left brain individual. I started painting and doing art when I was about 9 or 10 and did that basically, throughout high school and the like going forward. When I went to university, I got my chemical engineering degree, but at the same time, my girlfriend at the time, she was an art major, and I would go to all of her art classes in addition to my engineering classes, and we did lithography, photography, sculpting, sketching, and all of that fun stuff, basic design work, and I really love art and the like going forward. But, during my career at Procter & Gamble, which spanned nearly 37 years, the reality is, I knew I wanted to do something different when I retired. Shortly before retiring, I became president of the Blues Society. And at that time, all of the blues artists had really horrible photographs. Okay. So what I decided to do was to brush off my old photography skills. Okay. And get back into it. This was about 3 years before retirement. And by the time I retired with the objective and the expectation to do a little bit of consulting and a little bit of photography, and the rest is history.
So there was a little bit of a sprinkled in passion for photography before you ever really became this guy that's taking pictures all the time, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's like I really appreciate art and in all of its various forms. So
amazing. All right. Do you remember the first live music show that you ever photographed in the professional manner, so to speak?
Oh, that's a tough one. There were a lot of the blues festivals and blues events that I did back in 2013, 14, 15. For being paid, that would be after I retired, and honestly, it may have been the very first Winter Blues experience that was held at Fretboard back in, 2018, I believe.
Wow. Okay. And, your life through the lens is so admired, like I said, by so many. And I live vicariously through your pictures when I can't be there, because it gives me not only a view of the event, but the feel and the vibe of the event. And you seem to be able to capture that so well, Ed. And I'm in amazement at your photographs. I mean, I take amateur photos on the weekends with my stuff I do. And I just, every chance I can to steal yours, I do.
Well, and you're more than welcome to it. I mean, I actually don't think of myself necessarily as a photographer in as much. What I really think of myself as a visual storyteller. Okay. And my job really is to create FOMO for the element going out there. And so, if what people are doing is living vicariously through my photos, then I've really succeeded in, my mission and my task.
Well, and you're a great addition to any venue when you walk in with that camera because you not only capture the moment with the musicians, but you're giving that venue if they have the right backdrop and the right identifiers when you're shooting those photographs. It can be a good boost in the arm for them, and venues need it as much as the musicians do for the promotion.
Oh, absolutely. Let's face it. There is an interdependence, obviously, between the musicians and the venues, I really like promoting the venues that I love, as well as the musicians and the bands that I love. It's a passion for me. So.
Well, it definitely shows. So how different is your life now compared to your corporate career? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, my corporate career, if you looked at the majority of my career, okay, I started, I did a lot of international travel. Actually, I've been to over 70 countries between working in and traveling to, and the like. I lived in Egypt, I lived in Germany, I've lived in Belgium, and of course, here in the United States. I've had organizations in Germany and Belgium and Mexico, China, Japan, and the like. So, I was always hopping all over the world and the like. Obviously, since retiring, I do an occasional vacation and a trip here and there. But what I really don't do is, travel internationally much anymore. At the same time, I also was probably working on an average of about 60 hours a week. In addition, when I wasn't traveling, I was also teaching Taekwondo and doing that probably 15 hours a week. So I had a very, very full schedule. I slept very little. Since retiring, I still am exceedingly busy, but nowhere nearly as busy as I was in my professional life.
Well, and I would call it a little bit, and I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but I kind of call it a reinventing of yourself. And I've done that too from my professional career. I've reinvented what I do, and it to me is very rewarding. What advice would you give somebody who's getting ready maybe to retire about doing something totally different than what you did in your professional life?
Well, to me, it was really about one simple thing. It was following your passion. Okay. And I had a passion for music. I had a passion for art, which photography is obviously my element going forward over there. And I still had a passion for maintaining, my intellectual sharpness in, the areas of my career. So I do some consulting and the like going forward. But, know what your passion is, pursue it, and then, go for it with all the gusto and energy that you can bring to it.
Well, that's great advice. And I think in anything you do, that's good advice, especially once you retire, because, retirement can be a tough thing. You lose all those people and all the things you've done for 30 some plus years. And you have to find something to a little bit, take your time up and not just sit and dwell on the fact that I'm not doing that anymore,
A- Absolutely. And the thing is, I loved what I did in my career and I loved the people that I worked with. It was just a really great and fascinating experience. It was highly stimulating. But near the end, it was like I go, if I continue doing this and working for a while longer, and I did retire early. I was, 58 when I retired. Going forward, uh, if you know if I lost that, and didn't replace it with something, my life would have been very, very empty. And instead, it's just like as much gusto as I put into my work, I put into my art and the local music community going forward. So.
And yes, you do. And let's talk about photography and live music for a minute. What
Sure.
is it? What is it about live music photography that excites you the most, Ed Sawicki?
Um, well, my approach to photography is, what I'm really aiming to do is to tell a story. And one of the things that I always do when I'm taking my photos is I'm looking for visual cues. And visual cues are very often an expression in the light going forward. And when people perform, there's an element of passion that is always inherently there. And I like trying to capture that passion. But sometimes those visual cues are what's happening around and in the environment and the context. And it may be shoes that rock, an artist's hands that work. It's looking both at the large picture in front of you, but also looking and exploring the fine details. And when you're shooting music, you have so much of it in such a very tight space with very often stage lights and great colors and the like. And, from an artistic point of view, I love it. I just absolutely appreciate that.
Well, I know you've shot other types of photography too. So, such as you've done weddings, you've done portrait shots of people out, and that. What makes live music photography different than the other types?
Well, so first of all, live music photography is very fast. So if I'm shooting a portrait, okay, in a session, at the end of the day, people are looking at getting, sometimes two or three or five good shots over a period of an hour. So you're able to control the lighting, you're able to control the environment, you work it slowly, you post people and the like. With live music, it's changing constantly. So when you see me out during a shoot, you notice that I'm in deep concentration. Okay. I will sometimes, if I'm shooting, for instance, Jam, 3 hours of doing that, I have a headache at the end of the night
Mhm.
because it was just so intense in terms of my focus. But it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing, and your ability to shoot and the like is, uh, it's a very different challenge. The other extreme is my landscape photography, where I'll go out and I'll spend, a couple hours hiking. I'll compose a photo, and sometimes I'll work on one image in the field 2 or 3 hours to just get the right light and the right shot of that particular scene. Well, I don't even have 2 or 3 seconds when I'm shooting a live music event to get that right thing. So it's a very different challenge. It definitely keeps me on my toes.
Well, and I've noticed that, especially like at the Bell and the Bear when we're there together, and I see you, some musicians on stage, they'll come together and they'll be, like the guitar player comes up with the singer and they're leaning into each other, do it, and you're scrambling to get through the crowd to get that perfect shot because that tells that story about the evening.
Yeah, and as you see, when I'm shooting a live music show, I am moving all over the place. It's always to try to get different angles and the like, and just to get that, perfect shot. And sometimes, they're so short lived, you can't get to it and you miss it. But over the course of an evening, the reality is hopefully I'm able to capture some and make pretty amazing and impressive shots out there.
Well, and I enjoyed Thursday night last week. You took a rare night off, Ed, and we sat there on the couch at the Bell and the Bear and had a little conversation and all. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. But you're right. When you get in the zone, taking photos, it's not that you're not approachable, but you're focused, and it's you can tell that you want to get those shots right and you want to do those things. So,
Yeah.
folks, if you're out there and you see Ed and you love Ed like I do, save the talk for when he's finished shooting that shot that he's trying to
Yeah.
get, because that's
Yeah.
where he's concentrated a lot.
Yeah, in my conversations when I'm shooting, maybe 20 or 30 seconds at most, and there's always an eye that's looking out and scanning the environment for something that could pop up as that potentially perfect shot. So So I do feel bad because I'm very much of an extrovert and I like being in the presence of people and I enjoy talking. But the reality is when I'm in my zone, I'm sort of in my zone. And sometimes, what we talk about may not be registered in my short term memory because I've been really focused primarily on, what I'm doing and what my job is at hand.
And you're right, and you're not focusing on that conversation, but your eyes scanning the room because you're also looking at the audience to capture that audience moment too that you do so well, and the people that are enjoying the front row and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I really love my candid shots of, what people, in their element, enjoying what they're doing and just capturing that one image. For music photography, I see some folks will shoot, strictly the musicians on the stage and the like. And, they can do some amazing and beautiful photographs. But for me, as I get back to the visual storytelling, it's really about the interaction between the music, the musicians, and the audience. And pictures of the audience are every bit as important to me for telling that story as it is for the people fundamentally on stage. They are the context, they are the reason we're there. And that's inherently what it's all about.
And I love that you say that because that is the other part of it that captures me when I can't be there. I want to see. I'm having that FOMO of who's there. I want to see my friends that are in the audience and the people that you capture, and that's so very important. And Megan made a comment here about love shoes that rock. I do too. I think, and the hands that work. Those are incredibly intelligent moves that you've done on your page and so on because that's telling another story.
Well, thank you. The artist hands that work were my idea, but the credit for Shoes That Rock goes to my wife. Okay. So one day I happened to snap a picture of somebody's shoes and she goes, that would really make a nice series and collection. And I go, really? and so I took that picture and I posted it and I said, guys, what do you think? And instantly I had like 10 positive responses. Oh, yes, please do that. And so I continued to do it. And I think it's actually probably the most popular thing that I do right now.
Well, hats off to her because we adore her too. But that's a great thing that you do, and I think a lot of people do. They tune in, so to speak, to your page to see those things.
Well,
so go ahead.
I was going to say, and I will tell you, there are a number of people who actually come up to me and says, "I went out and bought these shoes and I wore them specifically for you tonight."
So better yet, take my picture. That's what they're saying.
Take my picture.
Yes,
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you to everybody that's joining us today, guys. We've got a ton of you out there today. Thanks so much. If you have a question for Ed, drop it in the comments. We'll try to pop it up on the screen. If not, he'll be monitoring this afterwards as well, and he can answer your questions. Ed, I want to know, too, as we're talking about live music photography, do you prefer shooting in a small local venue, or do you like shooting the big concert scenes?
I far prefer the small local venues, and there's a couple reasons for that. So if I'm shooting Tedeschi trucks on stage at the PNC, and the like, the lighting's perfect. Okay, Tedeschi trucks have 10 million shots of them and the like going forward. I actually find the shooting not as challenging because the stage lighting and everything is absolutely perfect. I like getting into the small venues to promote the people who actually will benefit by my photographs. Okay, the venues who will benefit by the photographs, and actually, it's usually not the ideal conditions. And as a photographer, I find that far more challenging. And for me, one of the most important things I can do is constantly challenge myself. And so if I'm shooting in not so much ideal conditions, but I get ideal and beautiful shots coming out, I feel far more accomplished than if I'm shooting at the Rose or PNC or whatever,
Right.
Brady, and getting a great shot, but it was like, whoopee. It
I
just
got you.
doesn't motivate me.
Well, and you're also making, I guess to coin a phrase, making the day of those local musicians when you capture that perfect shot. And I can't, I think Kevin mentioned it earlier, but how many artists in this region use one of Ed Sawicki's photos as their cover photo is just amazing to me because there's so many of them. And Kevin has a question about lighting configurations work worst are the worst for live music. I was going to ask a question that says basically how challenging is it to capture the good shots in some of these clubs that don't necessarily have the best lighting?
It really is, and as you know, Scott, I talk about the fact that I do edit my photos quite a bit, and very often will have to relight them. I think it's important to be able to get the light on the face of the subject, okay, and the like. One of the challenges very often with smaller venues is the light will come in very harsh and you get a lot of hot spots. So what I find I have to shoot and do in a lot of the smaller venues is I will underexpose my photographs in camera such that I don't have blown out highlights on the various artists. Nothing worse than having a face that's 100% white but zero detail inherently there. But to get that right balance, I will shoot sometimes, one or two stops underexposed and then have to bring it up in post such that I get a really good creative mix going forward and get all the detail and contrast going forward.
Well, thanks for that advice out there to some folks because when I shoot some shows I go to with my iPhone, I get the blowout all the time. I mean, it's like the lighting just messes with, and I can edit a little, but I don't always take the time to do what you do. I mean, you spend hours making sure these photos are perfect when you put them up.
Yeah, I average between 3 and 4 minutes per photo for editing when I do that. So when you see me doing a post of 80 photographs, that's basically 4 hours worth of editing in there between selecting the photos, doing the editing, and I edit in multiple layers and the like going forward.
I think Bill has a great comment here, and I think that he's summing up what we were talking about earlier with retirement. Best gig ever. He says he was in an auto worker for 40 years with no windows where he worked, and now he's outside. Photography and videography is his side passion, and he said, "I'm no Ed, though." Well, I say that every show, Bill.
Well, and it's simple. I'm no Bill. I've done videography for a little while. It wasn't paying nearly as much as what my photography business was. It was actually costing me far more in terms of the back office. People don't realize, as a musician or a photographer or videographer, you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on equipment, and then you're paying a lot of back office work, and it's thousands upon thousands a year. And the videography wasn't paying out for me at all. And so I've stopped that entirely, even though, I do enjoy doing it. But, at the end of the day, I want my time to be valued and I want to raise money for doing various different things. So.
Well, and not to get off topic, but while we're on that point, I will say that, musicians that are out there watching this show today, occasionally, you all stand on stage and everybody likes to get a tip or two here and there for their music they play. Well, he's not out soliciting money when he does this and takes these photos, but I will tell you that he certainly probably would appreciate if you throw him a little tip, especially if you're using his photos as your promo shot all the time and on your pages and things like that. Think about that a little bit and help support Ed as well, because it is expensive. It's no different than our radio business here. This equipment's expensive and
exactly
those things. And so please think about that, folks, when you can do it. So Ed, you've photographed a lot of local musicians and bands. What impresses you the most about the local music scene?
Oh, well, there's really two elements. One, and you've talked this a lot on your show and the like, is just the level of talent within the region. Okay, and that's whether we're in the cover band scene, the original, songwriter scene, we're talking the blues scene or the jazz scene. There's amazing breadth of talent and depth of talent that exist here. It really is great. I just love the quality of musicians that we have here. And then the second thing, what I really love about it is the camaraderie. Okay, it really is a community, and you hear that where other communities just aren't as tight as the Cincinnati, Dayton area, and like going forward. But I love the fact that people get out there, they support other bands, they go to see other bands when they're not playing. They wear each other's T-shirts, and it's that friendship and openness that inherently makes it really special. And I really enjoy being a member of this community.
Well, and you're a huge part of this community. And what Kevin Tolles is saying is so important as well here, and that is that Ed shares his talent and knowledge with people. He's not afraid to tell people that are trying to take photographs about things and all that. And Tim McCann is a great example of that. Ed has shared a lot of advice with Tim, and Ed can't be everywhere. He can't be at every show. So what's Tim do when Gina's on stage and Johnny and all them? He's taking photographs and doing what you're trying to do, tell the story about the show that they did that night. And so you're really kind of paying it forward, Ed, I think.
Yeah.
And people like that are having fun with it.
And Tim's doing phenomenal. And the thing is, I love to teach. Okay. At the end of the day, one of the reasons why I spent so long doing martial arts is I love teaching. Is part of my job. I used to fly all over the world to do teaching of purchasing skills and R&D skills within Procter and Gamble. Teaching is an absolute passion. When other photographers are out there, I love it, and I'm always very happy to talk with people and share how I'm shooting and learn how they're shooting, because at the end of the day, I'm still an infant. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I spend a couple hours a day practicing different techniques and learning different things about photography simply to constantly get better.
Well, and every time I see your photos, I mean, they seem to just get enhanced more and more. I mean, you're getting those shoes that rock shots, and you're getting all those things, and whereas in the beginning, I think you were doing a lot of just taking the musicians on stage. You're capturing the entire room now, and again, that's so important. And I want to say I know the answer to this question already for me, but I'm going to ask you, how important do you think photographers are in the local music scene?
Well, I think it's exceedingly important. First of all, the reality is, most people getting their news out about their bands and the like is through social media. And if you don't have professional looking images, you don't come across as professional. It's just that simple. And if you
That's good.
really want to get booked, okay, and you want to come across well, get some good quality photos. It doesn't have to be from an Ed Sawicki. There's a lot of other fantastic photographers out there. But the reality is, you've talked this before, Scott. Don't put bad videos out. And my comment is, don't put bad photos out either. And if you have mediocre photos, the reality is people are going to very often think you're often having a mediocre product, and that's not what you want.
Yeah, and I'll apologize in advance for the mediocre photos that I post on my page, but they're just meant to tell people where we were, and that's about it.
There's no need to apologize for they're capturing an emotion, they're capturing an element, okay, and it's all what it's inherently about. And the more one does to promote, it lifts all boats. Okay, so that's what it's all about.
Well, on that topic then of you saying that, having good photos on your page is important for a musical group or solo artist, I want to ask you this. What do local musicians sometimes overlook when it comes to stage presence and creating that perfect photo moment?
The reality is, I think there's an element of eye contact. Stories are told through the eyes, okay? And the reality is, having the ability to look up at the crowd. If you see the photographer out there, engage them with your eyes a little bit, and the like. Some musicians are absolutely brilliant at doing that. Others, just are always down strumming on their guitar and not really engaging. And you know what? If they're not engaging with the photographer, they're also not engaging with the audience. And part of that is developing that rapport that one has between the musician and their audience. So it's just that element of physical engagement and the like going forward.
All right, I got a good comment here by Jeff Meadows, who helps sponsor the jam at the Bell and the Bear, and he's talking about gladly sending money for pictures, especially of Nate, his son, who plays guitar. And Ed, if you have a Venmo, I think you do.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. If you maybe after the show can place it in the comments, I think it would be beneficial. And we're not here. It's not a telethon today. We're not raising money or anything, but it's so nice that people want to give back to you for what you do, and I think that's important.
No, I greatly appreciate it. Yeah. So I do have a Venmo, and that's how probably 95% of what I get paid for is really through Venmo. I find that the most convenient and the easiest. Some people will pay cash, and then what I'm shooting for festivals and the different municipalities and the like, it's obviously a check payment and the like going forward.
And he mentioned a good thing, too, about your watermark that's on your pictures. And I'm just going to say this as a consumer of your photos. I have found myself, first of all, you can't put it into some AI program because it'll cut the watermark out. It does that all the time. But if you put it in on your page, leave the watermark on. Let people know who took that photograph that you're using on your page, and don't crop it out and all those things. And Ed's very generous about it. He doesn't have it across your face, or any of that. It's just in the bottom corner of the picture. But try to leave that watermark up so people understand where this photo came from, and give the credit where credit's due a little bit. That's Scott's opinion.
I appreciate that. It's very important. I mean, at the end of the day, inherently, I want to support my brand. So, when it's there. Now, I recognize if people are using it as a Facebook profile pic, the reality is a circle will always cut it out at the corner, but as long as it's still there in the full photo, if people like going forward, that's great. But yeah, I do believe it's important to brand yourself, and at the end of the day, it is a small business, as an LLC that I have, and it's just it's coming from a company like Procter and Gamble. Branding is very important,
to say the least, and they're great at it. So I've got another changing gear here in the creative process a little bit before we run out of time today, Ed. Do you ever know immediately when you've captured that perfect shot or the shot of the night?
Absolutely. All of a sudden, I'll shoot something. I just have a big smile on my face. Okay. Just like there was one the other night I took of Kevin Tolles, and he was silhouetted against a very bright background and the like. And his position was absolutely perfect. That was one that actually did very little to edit going forward, other than putting in a 4:5 crop, and it just is exciting. And sometimes you just have that eye contact and the like, and you just nailed it. And it's sort of like hitting a hole in one. Okay, people who hit that hole in one, they're smiling the minute they made contact with the ball, because they know it's flying straight and the like, and it's a beautiful shot.
Couple more questions here, Ed. You've done nationals before? You've shot nationals and you've shot locals, but have you ever had an unforgettable backstage moment with any behind the scenes artist?
Well, let me share a story. Okay, a few years ago, actually quite a few years ago. It was 2017. A friend of mine calls me up and says, "Hey, my brother's going on tour. He's a really good blues artist. You ought to see him." And this is when I was the president of the Blues Society, and I was getting a lot of questions, and statements like that. And so I sort of ignored her. A week later, she calls me up again, and during the conversation, she says the same thing, and I ignored her again. Finally, another week goes by. She calls me up and she says, "Yeah, you really ought to listen. My brother's really very good. You might enjoy to listen to him." And so I finally asked the question, "Okay, who's your brother?" She goes, "Well, it's not really my brother. We call him that, but you know my sister's married to Eric Clapton, right?" And I go, "No, I didn't." She goes,
Wow.
we would like to invite you to come sit with the family as he's going out in the world tour. Okay, he's only doing 3 concerts. He's doing one at Royal Albert Hall, Madison Square Garden, or Hollywood Bowl. Come out, join us, and the like. So, I got a chance to see Eric Clapton sit with the family. Needless to say, when he played Tears in Heaven, sitting with the family, there were a lot of tears, amongst people's eyes going there. Opening for Eric was Jimmy Vaughn and Gary Clark Jr. And Gary Clark Jr. backstage when we were talking after the show, I go, "Well, how did you actually link up with Eric?" And Gary Clark Jr. basically said, he goes, "Well, one day I'm playing this small little gig in Columbus, and Eric lives in Columbus part of the year. That's where his wife is from. And who walks in but Eric Clapton? He sits down in front of me like this and stares at me for the whole show because I'm shitting bricks, okay? you know, and then he comes up to me afterwards and he says something. I go, "What did he say?" He goes, "Hell if I know. All I know, I'm on an airplane. I'm touring the world with Eric Clapton."
That's
so
outstanding.
it's just that was one of the more interesting backstage experiences I've had with headliners. And that show, actually, Eric only did 2 shows on his world tour. He had been off for 5 years because he couldn't perform. He had some issues that was later diagnosed as Lyme disease, and once that was cured, he got feelings back in his finger. And so he did Royal Albert Hall, Madison Square Garden, where we saw him, and he had to cancel his Hollywood Bowl concert because he got sick while he was at Madison Square Garden. So
Oh,
I'm
wow.
glad I chose that one.
Yeah, that's an excellent story, man. That's cool. And I'm glad you connected with her and finally found out who she was talking to. It's funny how that works sometimes, isn't it?
It really is an important life lesson. And it really taught me a lot that day, which is, listen to people, ask questions. Don't think you know the answer. Don't, brush people off so casually and so easily. Be receptive, have your ears open, and be open for new experiences.
Well, we could all use some of that advice, I think, from on many given days, Ed. So, what keeps Ed Sawicki motivated to keep chasing the next great image out there?
Well, one of the challenges is always maintaining that artistic freshness and the like. So I love shooting new bands. I love going to new experiences and the like going forward. I like mixing it up with festivals and events, and keeping myself stimulated and the like. So it really is finding the right recipe to keep the level of mental stimulation and artistic stimulation up out there. And speaking of events, you and I are going to be actually doing one together in about a week and a half over in Springfest for the Berg over in Miamisburg all weekend. And that was such a wonderful event last year when I shot it, and I'm really looking forward to doing it again. Uh, a week from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that we're going to have a lot of great music and a lot of great fun together.
We have a good one there. We have a good time, Ed. And then by
We
Sunday, ask us how our feet are.
Oh, I have to say, I am so spent after that.
Me too.
That-
Yeah, that's a worker, but it's so much fun. Live music all weekend long, guys. If you haven't seen that, it's on our page called Springfest in the Berg, and there's crafts, festival stuff for the kids, rides, food, and live music all weekend long with some great artists.
yeah, yeah.
Really great artists.
Last year on Saturday, I did 32,000 steps. Okay, so that I am moving around quite a bit, and I am deaf. That Monday afterwards, needless to say, I am done.
Taking the day off like me. All right. So let's talk about where people can find your work online, Ed, and that real quick if we can.
Okay, so you can find me on Facebook, Edward Sawicki. The actual designation is Edward Sawicki, Edward.Sawicki.5. And I have a collection online on Pixieset under Sawicki Photography at pixieset.com. That's sort of an online gallery, an online store of some selected items, and I change that up occasionally of, stuff that we have in essence going out there.
All right, I'll pop that back up on the screen because I had a little typo in it there, I think. So we'll get it up there. Edward.Sawicki.
Okay, you got not Edwards, but
yeah. Let's fix that again. Go ahead and say that again, though.
Edward.Sawicki.
Yeah.
.5.
My old eyes aren't working well here on the screen. So
by the way, how did you love that AI bio of me?
That was hilarious. It's like make you a rocket scientist and all kinds of wild stuff in there. That was hilarious. And that's the thing about you never know what's real anymore, Ed.
And that bothers me because one of my jobs as a consultant for the last 5 years, I've been a consultant to the AI industry. Okay. And I know when you do it well, it could be a very accurate, very powerful, and helpful tool. But when I see stuff like that, the reality is, guys, I'm not a Green Beret. I did not enlist in the Army when I was 7 years old and served in Vietnam. Okay. I've never worked as a quality control for Intel, and I am not the father of semiconductor quality control, just in case people are wondering.
Yeah, and you can click on those on almost every business page you go to. You can click get the inside AI, whatever meta AI information, and it's usually all. I mean, if you click on mine on my page that says that, it takes you to the World Federation wrestler Scott Hall, who beat his wife and died at an early age, and all those things. And I mean, I don't want to be known as that. So, that stuff sometimes just take it with a grain of salt.
But when you have a link to a person's page there, an AI should be smart enough to direct that link to the about, then do some deep search on that particular page, get connected to some other pages, and provide a very good quality summary going forward. If you have a random name, especially with something like Scott Hall or the like, you may get the wrong person out there. But you're not going to do it if there's a link.
Negative, yeah. So, Ed, I always end every interview with a question for my artists. You've watched them and you know my question, but this one's going to be a little twist on that. If you could go back in time and photograph any concert in history, what would it be?
It probably would be the very first concert I've ever attended, and if I could do that today, it was a band called the Eagles. You may have heard of them. Okay,
no.
It was an outdoor stadium concert, and they had this unknown group that I couldn't pronounce their name, opening for them, and they finished their set with this song called "Sweet Home Alabama," and it was before it actually became popular, and I said, that's got a pretty good beat to it, and it may actually become popular one day. So, I would love to be able to capture with my skill set, with my cameras and stuff, that particular concert today, because the memory is so vivid. Okay, when you had the 50, 60,000 people all singing in unison "Witchy Woman" as Eagles performed, it was just a very special event. It's still probably my favorite concert that I've ever attended.
Well, outstanding, my friend. And it has been such a great pleasure to have you here today and get a little more inside background into Mr. Edward Sawicki, who's, as I said, I will paraphrase what most people are saying here, the most beloved man in local music when it comes to photographs. And you're not only approachable, but you're just a rock star, my friend. You're just so cool at what you do, and we appreciate you. I appreciate you more than you know. You've taken some great pictures for me and for my promotion, and for Karis and I. How you get a good picture of Karis and I together is amazing, because usually we're scowling at each other or fighting or something. So yeah, it's wonderful, and you seem to be able to really, really do it, Ed. And thank you so much for joining me on this show today.
Well, I really appreciate that, Scott. And Scott, thank you for all you do for the community. It really does bring people together, and the role you play is absolutely insurmountable. And, kudos to you, my friend.
Well, thank you. And thanks for your support and other things, too. You showed up this past weekend at Miracle League Baseball the weekend before, and you took some great pictures of those kids, and what a heartwarming experience that was for you and me both to be there together and enjoy that. And you just get out there and you work tirelessly, Ed, so I can't thank you enough.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and you're very welcome, Scott.
All right, guys, we're going to get out of here today. We've run about 45 minutes on this one, and we appreciate you being with us. It went fast, Ed. We could talk for 2 hours, my friend.
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys tune in tomorrow. We'll be here live at 5 with our series called Who's Playing Out, the best musicians and venues in the tri-state, and who's playing there. And we'll share over the weekend some of Mr. Sawicki's pictures. So check those out as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in next time here at All Around Town Radio. Bye, Ed. Just a quick reminder, everyone, the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of our sponsors or any entities they may represent. Good done.